The death of Alice in Chains lead singer Layne Staley continues to haunt all those who knew him, so you may be surprised what some of his former bandmates have to say about the rock icon. In talking about the release of a special 30th anniversary edition of Alice in Chains' seminal 1992 album Dirt, the group's longtime drummer Kinney couldn't help but address the elephant in the room. Staley wrote and sang about what he knew. In the case of Dirt, that meant many songs about mental illness, loss, and the savage hold of drug addiction. Kinney worried that making art about these heavy subjects may have cast Staley in an inaccurate light. In 2022, Kinney told Variety, "Dirt was never a drug concept album and Layne wasn't a He wasn't tormented, but instead witty, funny, and generous. Layne was great at everything except for being a rock star. Doom and gloom may be a stigma. Most of our music is about persevering and overcoming, but all of us had similar situations to Layne." Bassist Mike Starr left Alice in Chains in 1993, but he remained on good terms with Staley. In 2010, Starr described Staley as a "dear friend, just a great person. What a great person he was." April 4, 2002 marked Starr's 36th birthday, and he wanted to celebrate the day hanging out with Staley. They remained in the singer's Seattle home, talking and watching TV, and it seemed to Starr that Staley had been so affected by years of drug abuse that he was in need of emergency medical attention. Starr later recalled, "I was with him all that day on my birthday trying to keep him alive. I even asked him if I could call 911, and he said if I did, he would never talk to me again. Of course, I didn't know he was going to die, or I would have called 911 anyway." Starr believed that he was very likely the last person who saw Staley alive. According to the local medical examiner's office, Staley died the day after Starr's visit on April 5, 2002. Back in the mid-'80s, Layne Staley joined a Seattle hard rock band that called itself Sleaze, which later changed its name to Alice in Chains. His bandmates included guitarist Scott Branom, whose brother, Tim Branom, was a musician, studio engineer, and producer. They enlisted Staley to record a 3-song demo, and Tim became Staley's vocal coach. In 2018, he told Music Festival, "I met him when he was 18. He was very non-judgmental, and I never heard him say a bad word about anyone. He looked at life as a wave and just rode the wave. Whatever came to him, he adapted and took the ride. He didn't complain about things. He just did what he had to do to get good and took his music seriously." Branom witnessed Staley's journey from rookie to renowned rock star and later wrote on Facebook, "I think in the end of his life, fame was not what he envisioned. Maybe fame didn't give him happiness, or maybe something else was troubling him. I never heard Layne speak a bad word about anyone. If there's anything we can learn, be kind to those that deserve it." By the time Sleaze had transformed into Alice in Chains, a lineup had solidified to include Staley on lead vocals and Nick Pollock on guitar. They were both active in the Seattle music scene of the 80s, but didn't become close until they landed the same day job and became drinking buddies. Pollock related in Mark Yarm's Everybody Loves Our Town. Layne was totally cocky and ended up being my best friend really quick, and he and I were inseparable. We worked together at a place that made radiation containment devices. He and I partied all the time. We would go to parties, we would make parties happen in people's houses. After one such late-night gathering in West Seattle, Pollock and Staley went on a spree of minor vandalism, and police noticed. Pollock said, "The rest of us got away, but they were chasing Layne. Like I said, Layne was cocky and he was a smartass to the wrong cop who actually sicked his dogs on him." Staley spent the night in prison and Pollock had to retrieve him in the morning.
It was a team and I really miss him a lot. I love him and I miss him terribly.
Most of the music in Alice in Chains was written by Staley and Jerry Cantrell. They forged a creative bond after becoming fast friends at a Seattle party in the late 80s. After Cantrell's family threw him out of his home, Staley took him in, and after their respective bands Diamond Lie and Alice in Chains broke up, they formed the brand new Alice in Chains. The partnership that powered Alice in Chains came naturally and organically. Cantrell told Variety, "Layne and I always considered each other a songwriting team without ever discussing it much. When he became interested in playing guitar, he started writing more, writing songs completely. Of course, I supported that. A great artist and a good guy driven to make good music. We pushed each other."
Just to be able to get to be in a band with a guy that does that to you, there's nobody better to me than him, and he's my friend.
For the 25th anniversary re-release of the singles movie soundtrack, Cantrell reflected on Staley's legacy.
Layne to me is one of the greatest singers in rock and roll history.
Early Alice in Chains got the sound that it wanted thanks to the consistent involvement of producer Dave Jerden. Jerden produced and led the recording sessions for the band's first 2 full-length albums, 1990's Facelift and 1992's Dirt. As important to the history and music of Alice in Chains as any full-time, full-fledged member, Jerden helped Staley reach his potential as a vocalist, while also witnessing firsthand his casual mastery of the voice and studio, using them as if they were musical instruments. Those recordings bear such richly layered vocals because Staley and main backing singer Jerry Cantrell captured their parts multiple times. In 2022, Jerden explained to Gearspace, all vocals by Layne, lead and backgrounds, were tripled. All of Jerry's vocals were doubled. Layne was a master matching himself, and most of the vocals were 1 or 2 takes. Layne would normally get a master take in the first or second track, and then I would continue to try a few more takes to see if he would top himself. He would give his all in every take. After original bassist Mike Starr left Alice in Chains, he was replaced by Ozzy Osbourne's bass player Mike Inez. Over the next several years, Inez got to know Staley pretty well enough to defend him from rumors and negative media attention in the years after his death. In 2013, Inez told Revolver, "I've noticed when people die, it seems like the general public kind of romanticizes it. They look for a lot of extra stuff when just the real was good enough. Layne was just a fantastic human. My 2 favorite singers are Freddie Mercury and Layne Staley. Everyone tried to duplicate them, but nobody could." Inez also spoke at length about what Staley was like to be around on a day-to-day basis. "He was such a bright light. He had just the bluest eyes. He lived for humor. The main thing for me was just his laugh. You could hear it all the way across the room, and there was just, realness to it. He'd never do any racist jokes. I never heard him talk about anybody. He was always very supportive of other bands." In 1994, Alice in Chains was booked on a summer tour with Metallica and was scheduled to play the Woodstock '94 festival. But then Alice in Chains canceled all of its appearances. Unbeknownst to the public at the time, Alice in Chains had briefly broken up, owing in large part to Staley becoming an unreliable bandmate due to drug misuse. During the Woodstock '94 weekend that Alice in Chains would have played, Staley went on a camping trip with 2 people, including Johnny Bacolas, a former bandmate from Alice in Chains. His current-day bandmates tried to get a hold of Staley, but he couldn't answer their calls because he'd gone into the Washington wilds to try to quit heroin. Bacolas recalled, "It wasn't much fun for Layne at all. He slept a lot on that trip. We were tending to him to an extent." Staley later suffered an emotional breakdown, likely triggered by withdrawals. Bacolas recalled, for Greg Prato's Grunge is Dead, "I would always tell him, 'Layne, why don't you take off, go to some deserted island, hire the best counselors, and just kick this shit?' And his rebuttal was, 'Johnny, I have celebrity status and I have a lot of money. I could fly planes out to deliver me the dope if I wanted to, and that's what I would do. I can't escape.'" Guitarist Mike McCready was one of the founding members of Pearl Jam. In 1994, he returned to Seattle following a stint in rehab and decided to keep busy by forming the band Mad Season with other musicians coping with sobriety. Among those was Staley.
I was in bed and he came in and woke me up and said, "You want to play a show in 3 days with these guys?"
Mad Season lasted for about 6 months and put out 1 album. Both Staley and bassist John Baker Saunders would later die from drug overdoses. Decades later, McCready was still mourning the deaths of his friends. He said of Staley, "I miss him a lot. He was just a guy that struggled, but he was a sweetheart and just couldn't get out of his addiction. Layne, to me, was a guy that never really bagged on anyone. He was a cool guy. I don't recall him ever making fun of people or being mean-spirited." Drummer Barrett Martin, who enjoyed success with the band Screaming Trees, was another member of Mad Season. Though the side project wasn't together for long, it was long enough for Martin to gain some insight into Staley's character, particularly how thoughtful he was. Martin told the Layne Thomas Staley, a legend-remembered Facebook account, "Layne was an extremely intelligent, humorous, and gracious human being, and he cared about things like politeness and kindness to strangers, qualities that seem to be forgotten in today's narcissism culture." Martin went on to explain that through his music, Staley provided a voice for the voiceless. He laughed easily and talked openly with his fans, and his guest list at shows was always reserved for the young, marginalized people who couldn't afford to buy a ticket. Those were Layne's people, the ones without a voice, and through the power of poetic language, Layne gave them a voice. Before he retreated into a life of isolation in a Seattle home, Staley contributed to what would be his last recording in 1998. He was selected to be the lead singer of a one-off supergroup called Class of '99, which was created to record a song for the darkly comic school-based horror movie The Faculty. Class of '99 laid down a semi-ironic cover of Pink Floyd's anti-private school screed Another Brick in the Wall Part 2. His collaborators on the rock radio hit were drummer Stephen Perkins of Jane's Addiction, bassist Martin Lenoble of Porno for Pyros, and Tom Morello, guitarist for Rage Against the Machine. Staley and Morello first became friendly back in the early 90s, when Alice in Chains and Rage Against the Machine appeared on the same Lollapalooza tour together. After that, Staley began to play guitar more, which helped lead to a long-standing rumor that Morello had taught him how to play the instrument. But in 2018, Morello debunked the rumor, saying, "That is not true, and I suspect he would not have been a good student." Morello went on to explain that they were just friends who loved rock, not a teacher and student. Layne was a very smart, very funny person with a great self-deprecating humor. We would often argue about which was more metal than the other, and I miss him a lot.